Hyunwoo Park looked out the viewport of his transport ship as they approached Concordia Prime. The massive space station hung in the darkness like a metal city, its lights twinkling against the stars. He had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years, but this mission felt different. The message from the Galactic Council had been cold and formal, demanding his immediate presence for urgent negotiations. The docking bay was huge, filled with ships from dozens of alien species. Hyunwoo's small human vessel looked tiny next to the massive Council warships. He noticed the weapons on those ships were powered up, which was unusual for a diplomatic meeting. "Ambassador, we're cleared to dock," said Do-hyun Kim, his security chief. Do-hyun was a former soldier who had served in the Outer Colony Wars. His hand rested near his weapon, and his eyes constantly scanned for threats. "Something doesn't feel right about this," whispered Ji-Young Lee, the communications officer. She was young but brilliant, with an ability to read between the lines of diplomatic messages. "The Council's communications have been strange. They're using military encryption codes." Tae-jin Choi, their cultural expert, nodded quietly. He had studied alien societies for 20 years and knew their customs better than most humans. "The greeting protocols they sent us are wrong. These are the codes used for criminals, not diplomats." Hyunwoo listened to his team, but kept his expression calm. He had learned long ago that showing worry would only make things worse. "We proceed as planned. Earth is counting on us to keep the peace." The docking process took longer than usual. Security scanners ran multiple times over their ship. Finally, they were allowed to disembark. The docking bay was filled with armed guards from different alien species. Their weapons were visible, another breach of diplomatic protocol. A tall reptilian creature approached them. Its scales were dark green, and its eyes were cold yellow. This was Vexthar, the Prime Counselor of the Sauridians. He had negotiated with humans before, but never with such hostility in his manner. "Ambassador Park," Vexthar said, his voice like grinding stone. "The Council awaits your presence." "Thank you, Prime Counselor," Hyunwoo replied politely. "I hope we can resolve whatever concerns have arisen." Vexthar's laugh was harsh. "Concerns? Yes, humanity has given us many concerns." The walk to the council chambers took them through the station's main corridors. Normally, these halls would be busy with traders and diplomats from across the galaxy. Today, they were nearly empty, except for more armed guards. The few aliens they passed looked at the humans with fear or hatred. The council chambers were enormous, designed to make visitors feel small. 12 massive seats arranged in a circle, each occupied by a representative of the major galactic species. Above them, holographic displays showed star maps and data streams. Hyunwoo recognized most of the council members. There was Click Tar, the insectoid whose species controlled the mining worlds. Luminox floated in his energy containment field, representing the beings of pure thought. Zephyra of the crystalline resonance sat quietly, her faceted body catching the light. But their faces were different today. Where once he had seen respect, now there was suspicion and anger. Only Zephyra seemed uncomfortable with the proceedings. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Park of the human species," Vexthar announced formally. "You stand before us to answer for your people's crimes." Hyunwoo felt his team tense behind him, but he remained calm. "Prime Counselor, I'm not aware of any crimes committed by humanity. Perhaps you could explain the charges?" "Expansion beyond agreed territories," Clicktar clicked angrily. 17 new colonies in the past year. "Those were uninhabited systems," Hyunwoo replied. "The expansion treaties allow settlement of empty worlds." "Military buildup in the Outer Rim," added another counselor. "Defensive installations only, as permitted under the security accords." For every accusation, Hyunwoo had a calm, reasoned response. These were not crimes, but legal activities under existing treaties. He began to realize this was not really about violations of law. Vexthar grew more agitated with each response. "Your species spreads like a plague across the galaxy. You consume resources, multiply rapidly, and show no respect for established order." "Humanity has honored every treaty and trade agreement," Hyunwoo said firmly. We have contributed to galactic peace and prosperity. Peace? Luminox's voice echoed strangely through his energy field. Your history shows nothing but war and violence. You fought each other for thousands of years before reaching the stars. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed. And we learned from those mistakes. That's why we seek cooperation rather than conflict. But he could see his words were falling on deaf ears. This was not a trial or negotiation. The council had already decided humanity's fate. Do-hyun moved slightly closer to his ambassador. His soldiers' instincts were screaming warnings. The stations, defensive systems were powering up. Security forces were moving into position around the chamber. This was feeling more like an ambush than a diplomatic meeting. Ji-young was quietly monitoring communications through her hidden earpiece. What she heard made her blood run cold. Fleet movements, attack coordinates, target lists that included Earth itself. Taijin had been studying the alien body language and expressions. Every species had different ways of showing emotion, but the message was clear. Fear, anger, and something else. The look of people who had already decided to kill. The truth is, Vexthar continued, humanity has become too dangerous to allow free movement across the galaxy. Your rapid growth threatens the established order. Your military capabilities, though hidden, have not gone unnoticed. Hyunwoo felt a chill. How much did they know about humanity's true defenses? Earth had always been careful to appear peaceful and non-threatening. Prime Counselor, he said carefully, humanity wants nothing more than to coexist peacefully with all galactic species. We have never shown aggression except in self-defense. Self-defense, Vexthar repeated mockingly. Soon you will have much need of it. The chamber fell silent. The other counselors watched as Vexthar stood to his full, imposing height. The Galactic Council has reached its decision, he announced. Humanity is declared a clear and present danger to galactic peace. Immediate action is required. Security forces began moving toward the human delegation. Do-hyun's hand moved to his weapon, but he was hopelessly outnumbered. Dozens of armed aliens surrounded them from all sides. This is a violation of diplomatic immunity, Hyunwoo protested, but his voice remained steady. Immunity is granted to diplomats of recognized civilizations, Vexthar replied with cruel satisfaction. As of this moment, humanity's recognition is revoked. Do-hyun drew his weapon, but energy blasts immediately struck him down. Taijin tried to destroy the classified documents in his briefcase, but was shot before he could complete the action. Ji-young screamed as rough alien hands grabbed. Her Hyunwoo did not resist as they placed restraints on his wrists. His face showed no fear, only a cold calculation that made some of the guards step back uncertainly. You are making a terrible mistake, he said quietly to Vexithar. The only mistake was allowing your species to spread this far, the Prime Counselor replied. But that error will soon be corrected. As they dragged the surviving humans away, Hyunwoo's last sight was of the star maps showing fleet movements toward human space. The trap was sprung, and Earth had no idea what was coming. The holding cells beneath Concordia Prime were cold and dark. Hyunwoo sat on the metal bench, his wrists still bound by energy restraints that burned if he moved too quickly. Ji-young was in the cell across from him, her face pale but determined. Do-hyun had been taken to the medical bay after being shot, and no one would tell them if he was alive. Tae-jin was dead. Hyunwoo had watched their cultural expert die trying to protect classified information. The man had a wife and 2 children back on Earth. Now they would never see him again. Ambassador, Ji-young whispered, I managed to send a burst transmission before they captured us. Earth knows something is wrong. Hyunwoo nodded slightly. It was good news, but he feared it might already be too late. The Council fleets had a significant head start toward human space. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. General Thokmar approached their cells, his massive frame filling the doorway. The alien was built like a walking tank, with thick armor, plating, covering his body and weapons mounted on his arms. The famous human diplomat, Thokmar said in his booming voice. Not so impressive now. General, Hyunwoo replied politely. I request medical attention for my security chief and proper treatment under galactic law. Thokmar's laughter shook the walls. Galactic law. You are no longer protected by any law. You are prisoners of war. What war? Hyunwoo asked. Humanity has committed no acts of aggression. The war that begins when our fleets reach your worlds, Thokmar said with satisfaction. By now, they should be halfway to Earth. The general moved closer to the energy bars of the cell. Your people think they are so clever, hiding their true nature behind peaceful words. But we have studied your history. We know what humans really are. And what is that? Killers, Thokmar said simply. Your entire species evolved from predators. Every human civilization has been built on violence and conquest. You spread across your planet by destroying everything in your path. Hyunwoo remained calm despite the alien's words. Humanity has grown beyond its violent past. We seek cooperation, not domination. Lies, Thokmar spat. We have seen your military records, the colony wars in the Outer Rim, the way your soldiers fought. No species that peaceful would be capable of such brutality. Those were defensive actions, Hyunwoo protested. Pirates and raiders threatened innocent civilians, and you exterminated them completely, the general continued. No prisoners, no mercy. Entire pirate fleets simply vanished. That is not the action of a peaceful species. The alien was not wrong, Hyunwoo realized. When humans went to war, they did tend to be very thorough, but that was different from being aggressive. The Council has decided that humanity must be contained before you become too dangerous, Thokmar explained. Your rapid expansion and hidden military capabilities make you a threat to galactic stability. So you plan to commit genocide? Ji Young spoke up from her cell, anger clear in her voice. We plan to solve a problem before it becomes unsolvable, the general replied coldly. Days passed in the dark cells. The only light came from the energy barriers that kept them imprisoned. Guards brought them basic food and water, but nothing more. No word about Do-hyun or any news from the outside. Then Vexthar appeared with recording equipment and a full camera crew. Today, the galaxy will see justice, the Prime Counselor announced. The trial of the human criminals begins now. They were dragged from their cells and taken to a large chamber filled with cameras and broadcasting equipment. This was not a courtroom, but a propaganda stage. The entire galaxy would watch this mockery of justice. Hyunwoo and Ji Young were forced to stand in the center of the room while Vexthar read a list of charges. Each accusation was more ridiculous than the last. Humans were accused of enslaving alien populations, destroying peaceful colonies, and planning to conquer the entire galaxy. These are complete fabrications, Hyunwoo said when allowed to speak. Humanity has never committed these acts. Vexthar activated a holographic display. Evidence, he announced. The images showed human ships attacking alien colonies, human soldiers executing prisoners, human leaders discussing plans for galactic domination. It was all fake, but the production quality was impressive. This is not real, Hyunwoo protested. These recordings have been manufactured. The defendant denies clear evidence, Vexthar said for the cameras. This shows the dishonest nature of the human species. The trial continued for hours. Every time Hyunwoo tried to present facts or logical arguments, he was cut off or ignored. The outcome had been decided before the trial began. Only one council member seemed uncomfortable with the proceedings. Zephyra of the crystalline resonance sat quietly in her observation seat, her faceted body dim with concern. She had worked with humans before on trade negotiations and found them honorable and trustworthy. Prime Counselor, she finally spoke, her voice like ringing crystal, I request permission to examine the evidence more closely. The evidence is clear, Vexthar replied sharply. Your concerns are noted but irrelevant. Zephyra's light dimmed further, but she said nothing more. She had tried to speak for the humans, but the other council members had already made their choice. As the fake trial continued, Hyunwoo began to understand the full scope of the betrayal. This had been planned for months, maybe years. The council had used the diplomatic meeting as a distraction while their fleets moved into position. By now, human colonies were under attack across the galaxy. The council finds the defendants guilty of all charges, Vexthar finally announced. The sentence is death for these individuals and extinction for their species. The chamber erupted in cheers from the alien audience. Cameras captured every moment for broadcast across the galaxy. "Prime Counselor," Hyunwoo said, his voice cutting through the noise, "I request permission to make a final statement." Vexthar considered this. It would make good theater for the broadcast. "Permission granted. Let the galaxy hear the last words of humanity." Hyunwoo stood straight despite his restraints. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "You have made a grave mistake," he said, looking directly into the main camera. "You attacked diplomats under a flag of truce. You fabricated evidence to justify genocide. You believe humanity is weak because we choose peace over war." He paused, and something changed in his expression. A coldness entered his eyes that made several council members shift uncomfortably. "You should have left us in peace," Hyunwoo continued. "Now you will learn what humanity is truly capable of when fighting. For survival, we do not make war like you do. When we fight to win completely and permanently." Vexthar laughed, but the sound was forced. "Empty threats from a powerless prisoner." "Not threats," Hyunwoo replied quietly. "Promises." The broadcast ended, and they were dragged back to their cells. But Hyunwoo's words had been heard across the galaxy. On Earth and human colonies, people watched their ambassador's final statement. They would remember those words in the dark days to come. In her observation chamber, Zephyra replayed the human's final statement. Something in his voice and expression troubled her deeply. She had worked with many species over the centuries, and she had learned to read the signs. The human had not spoken like a defeated prisoner making empty threats. He had spoken like someone who knew something the council did not. She began to wonder if the council had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Sora Kang stood in the war room beneath the Defense Ministry in Seoul, watching the emergency broadcast from Concordia Prime. Around her, the command staff sat in stunned silence as they witnessed the mock trial of their ambassador. "Shut it off," she said quietly. The screens went dark. In the silence that followed, Kang could hear her own heartbeat. 30 years of military service had prepared her for many things, but watching a trusted colleague condemned to death on false charges was not one of them. "Admiral," said Woo Jin Nam, her chief tactical officer, "we're receiving confirmation from our deep space monitors. Multiple council fleets are moving toward human space. The largest group is heading directly for Earth." "Time to arrival?" Kang asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. 72 hours at current speed. 72 hours. The council expected humanity to panic, to beg for mercy, to negotiate from a position of weakness. They had no idea what they had actually done. "Hey, Wan," Kang said to her intelligence director. "Activate all sleeping assets. Full revelation protocols. I want every human agent in council space to drop their cover immediately." Hey Wan Lim nodded and began typing activation codes. Across the galaxy, humans who had lived for years as simple traders, explorers, and scientists received encrypted messages that changed everything. The time for hiding was over. "What about Operation Reaper?" Woo Jin asked carefully. Admiral Kang was quiet for a long moment. Operation Reaper was humanity's ultimate contingency plan, developed by Dr. Yunji Huang after the colony wars. It was designed for exactly this situation, when humanity faced complete extinction from a superior force. "Begin preliminary activation," she decided. "Full authorization pending presidential approval." In the presidential palace, Min Ho Seo received Admiral Kang's briefing with cold fury. He had served as president for 8 years, always working to maintain peace with the alien species. Now that peace had been shattered by betrayal and lies. "Mr. President," his chief of staff said nervously, "the emergency session of Parliament is ready. What should we tell them?" President Seo looked out the window at the city of Seoul, where millions of people were going about their daily lives, unaware that alien fleets were racing toward Earth with genocidal intent. "Tell them the truth," he said, "and then ask them to authorize what we should have done years ago." The emergency session was unlike anything in Earth's history. Representatives from every nation and colony gathered by hologram as President Seo explained the situation. The images from Concordia Prime had already reached Earth through quantum communication channels. "The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity based on fabricated evidence," the president said. Their fleets are already moving to destroy every human world. We have perhaps 70 hours before the first attacks begin." The parliamentary chamber erupted in angry voices. Some called for immediate negotiation. Others demanded military action. A few suggested evacuation of Earth's population. "Mr. President," said the representative from Mars Colony, "surely we can find a diplomatic solution. Ambassador Park would want us to try negotiation first." "Ambassador Park is likely already dead," President Seo replied bluntly. "They attacked him under a flag of truce. They fabricated evidence to justify genocide. There will be no negotiation." He activated a holographic display showing fleet positions and projected attack vectors. The scope of the Council's assault was clear. This was not a limited action, but an attempt at complete extermination. "I am requesting authorization for Operation Reaper," President Seo announced. The chamber fell silent. Every representative knew what that meant. Operation Reaper was humanity's plan for total war, the kind of conflict their species had hoped never to fight again. "Sir," the representative from Europa Station said slowly, "Operation Reaper will reveal capabilities we've kept hidden for decades. There will be no going back to peaceful coexistence." "The Council has made that choice for us," the President replied. "They want to see what monsters look like. I suggest we show them." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the machinery of human civilization shifted into a configuration the galaxy had never seen. Manufacturing facilities hidden in asteroid belts came online, producing weapons and ships from stockpiled materials. Military bases concealed throughout human space activated their true capabilities. Commander Dongwook Park, younger brother of the captured ambassador, received his orders aboard the stealth destroyer Silent Vengeance. His ship was one of 12 identical vessels that officially did not exist. "All ships, this is Fleet Command," came Admiral Kang's voice over secure channels. "You are authorized for Operation Reaper. Rules of engagement are unlimited. Show them what happens when they attack our diplomats." Dongwook looked at his crew. They were young men and women who had trained for years for a war they hoped would never come. Now it was here, and their training would be put to the ultimate test. "Helm, set course for Concordia Prime," he ordered. "Maximum stealth. We have a diplomat to rescue and a message to deliver." The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's peaceful facade had hidden something much more dangerous. For centuries, humans had studied the art of war not to practice it, but to perfect it. Every conflict in human history had taught them lessons about strategy, tactics, and the psychology of warfare. Dr. Yunji Huang worked frantically in her laboratory beneath the Seoul Military Academy. For 20 years, she had prepared for this day, developing weapons and strategies that could level the playing field against superior alien technology. "Admiral Kang," she reported via secure link, "all Reaper assets are online. The Council thinks they know our capabilities based on the colony wars. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The colony wars had been limited conflicts against pirates and raiders. Humanity had deliberately held back, using only conventional tactics and weapons. They wanted to appear competent, but not threatening. Now, the restraints were coming off. Captain Byung-ho Ryu led the first wave of human fighters toward the Council fleet approaching the Outer Rim colonies. His squadron consisted of ships the enemy had never encountered, fighters that could become invisible to sensors, weapons that turned a planet's own gravity into a weapon, and tactics developed from humanity's long history of warfare. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we're not just fighting for victory, we're fighting to ensure no one ever threatens humanity again." The first Council ships died without ever knowing they were under attack. Human stealth technology was decades ahead of anything the aliens possessed. By the time the Council forces detected the human fighters, half their fleet was already destroyed. But this was just the beginning. Special Forces Colonel Insu Park led infiltration teams toward Council homeworlds. Their mission was not just to disrupt enemy operations, but to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Attacking human diplomats under a flag of truce would have consequences. The teams moved like ghosts through Council space, using cover identities that had been built over years of patient preparation. When they struck, it would be at the heart of alien civilization. Meanwhile, on Earth, the population watched the news with grim determination. There was no panic, no desperate flights to escape. Humanity had faced extinction before and survived. They would do so again. In the Seoul War Room, Admiral Kang watched the tactical displays as human forces moved into position across the galaxy. The Council had expected humanity to react with fear and confusion. Instead, they were responding with the cold precision of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of survival. "Wu Jin," she said to her tactical officer. "Signal, all units. Operation Reaper is now fully active. Let's remind the galaxy why predators should be left alone." The message went out across human space, carried by quantum transmitters to every ship, base, and hidden facility. Humanity was going to war. Not in anger, but with the systematic efficiency of natural-born killers who had finally stopped pretending to be anything else. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were truly capable of when they stopped trying to be civilized. The first Council fleet to encounter human military forces was commanded by Admiral Zockatar of the insectoid hive worlds. His massive dreadnoughts had conquered a dozen species over the past century. He expected the humans to flee or surrender when faced with his overwhelming firepower. Instead, his ships began exploding one by one. "Report!" Zockatar clicked frantically as another dreadnought vanished in a ball of fire. "Unknown weapons, Admiral," his tactical officer replied. "We cannot detect the source of the attacks." Captain Byung-ho Ryu smiled grimly as he watched the alien fleet fall apart on his screens. His fighter squadron had been attacking for 10 minutes, and the enemy still had no idea where the shots were coming from. Human stealth technology was not just advanced, it was revolutionary. While other species had focused on bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humanity had perfected the art of not being seen. Their fighters could hide in plain sight, invisible to every known form of sensor. "Target their command ship," Byung-ho ordered his pilots. "Let's end this quickly." The flagship of the Council fleet died in seconds, its shields useless against weapons that fired from impossible angles. Admiral Zocktar's last thought was confusion about how an entire fleet could be destroyed by an enemy they could not even see. The victory was complete, but it was only the beginning. On Concordia Prime, General Thokmar received the first reports of the fleet's destruction with disbelief. According to the survivors, the humans had somehow made their entire military invisible. "Impossible," he growled. "Our sensors are the best in the galaxy." "General," his aide said nervously, "we're receiving similar reports from 3 other sectors. Human forces are striking everywhere at once." Thokmar studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The human attacks were not random. They showed a level of coordination and planning that suggested years of preparation. Meanwhile, in the lower levels of the station, something was happening that Thokmar did not know about. Ji-Young Lee had not been idle in her cell. The young communications officer had been trained for situations like this. The quantum transmitter implanted in her spine was undetectable by most alien technology. For days, she had been sending tactical information about the station's defenses, guard rotations, and command structure. Every detail was being transmitted to human intelligence networks. Hyun-woo watched from his cell as his companion worked. He could not see what she was doing, but he knew Ji-Young well enough to recognize the signs. She was not just a prisoner, she was a spy gathering information for the coming storm. "Ambassador," she whispered during a guard change, "help is coming." On the surface levels of Concordia Prime, alien civilians were beginning to panic. News of military defeats was spreading quickly, and the confident speeches of council leaders were being replaced by worried silence. Zephyra of the Crystalline Resonance stood in her quarters, watching the news feeds with growing horror. The human response was not what anyone had expected. Instead of desperate defense, it was systematic destruction of council forces. She had tried to warn the other council members, but they had ignored her concerns. Now she watched as the consequences of their arrogance played out across the galaxy. The door to her quarters chimed. "Enter," she said, her crystalline voice reflecting her worry. Special Forces Colonel In-Soo Park stepped inside, his face hidden by advanced camouflage technology that made him nearly invisible. Only Zephyra's unique crystalline vision could detect his presence. "Counselor," he said politely, "my name is Colonel Park. I believe you tried to speak for humanity during the trial. Zephyra's light dimmed with fear. How did you get past station security? Human technology has advanced considerably since we last showed our true capabilities, Insu replied. I'm here to offer you a choice. He activated a small holographic projector that showed the tactical situation across the galaxy. Council fleets were being destroyed faster than replacements could be deployed. Human forces were striking at military targets, supply lines, and communication networks with devastating precision. Your species chose to attack our diplomats and attempt genocide, Insu continued. The war they started will continue until humanity's survival is assured. However, those who showed honor during the crisis may find mercy. Zephyra studied the human soldier carefully. He was not threatening her directly, but the implication was clear. Choose humanity's side now or face the consequences later. What do you want from me? She asked. Information, Insu replied simply. Guard rotations, security codes, the location of our ambassador. In return, your species will be spared when this war ends. It was not much of a choice, but it was more than the Council had offered humanity. Dr. Sungmin Lee worked in his underground laboratory, monitoring the deployment of humanity's most advanced weapons. The galaxy was about to learn that the humans they had dismissed as primitive were capable of technologies that bordered on the impossible. Admiral Kang, he reported, the gravity weapons are performing perfectly. Council ships have no defense against attacks that use their own mass against them. The gravity weapons were Dr. Sungmin's masterpiece, devices that could turn a planet's gravitational field into a weapon. Enemy ships found themselves crushed by forces they could not see or understand. What about the psychological warfare program? Admiral Kang asked. Exceeding expectations, Dr. Sungmin replied with satisfaction. Council forces are surrendering rather than face human tactics they cannot comprehend. The psychological warfare was perhaps humanity's cruelest innovation. Instead of simply destroying enemy forces, human commanders were using terror tactics, learned from centuries of studying warfare. Enemy soldiers who survived human attacks spread stories of invisible killers and impossible weapons. Fear was spreading faster than human fleets. Commander Dongwook Park approached Concordia Prime with grim purpose. His stealth destroyer had traveled for days through Council space without being detected. Now he was ready to complete his mission. All teams, prepare for insertion, he ordered. We have a diplomat to rescue and a message to deliver. The assault on Concordia Prime began at exactly midnight station time. Human commandos materialized throughout the facility, moving like ghosts through corridors that should have been impassable. General Thokmar was in his command center when the lights went out. Emergency power flickered on, casting eerie shadows, as alarms blared throughout the station. What's happening? He demanded. Unknown forces have penetrated the station, his aide reported. Security is reporting contacts throughout all levels, but our sensors show nothing. Thokmar grabbed his weapons and headed for the detention levels. If humans were aboard, they would try to rescue their ambassador. He would be waiting for them, but the humans were already there. Do-hyun Kim had spent days in the medical bay, recovering from his wounds and planning. The alien doctors thought he was unconscious, but human military training included techniques for remaining aware even under sedation. When the assault began, he was ready. The medical bay erupted in chaos as Do-hyun struck with surgical precision. Alien guards fell without understanding what had hit them. In seconds, the security chief had armed himself and was moving toward the detention cells. Hyun-woo heard the sounds of battle echoing through the station corridors. Explosions, weapon fire, and alien voices raised in panic. Then the energy barriers of his cell flickered and died. "Mr. Ambassador," said a familiar voice, "it's time to go." Commander Dongwook Park stood in the corridor outside the cell, his advanced armor making him look like a figure from an alien nightmare. Behind him, human commandos moved with deadly efficiency. "My brother sends his regards," Dongwook said as he helped Hyunwoo to his feet. "Earth has not forgotten its diplomat." As they moved through the station, Hyunwoo saw the evidence of human capabilities unleashed. Alien security forces lay unconscious or dead throughout the corridors. Advanced technology that should have been impossible to breach had been overcome with ease. "How many ships did you bring?" he asked. "Just one," Dong-wook replied. "We didn't need more." General Thokmar finally cornered a group of human commandos in the main corridor. His massive frame blocked their path and his weapons were charged. "And ready. Face me, cowards!" he roared. The humans stopped and turned toward him. For a moment, Thokmar felt satisfaction. Finally, a direct confrontation. Then one of the humans smiled. The general never understood what killed him: human weapons. Technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed. Thokmar simply ceased to exist, reduced to atoms by energy that reorganized matter at the quantum level. The rescue mission was completed in less than an hour. As the human team prepared to leave Concordia Prime, Commander Dong-wook activated the station's communication system. His message was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every Council world and military base. "This is Commander Park of the Human Defense Force," his voice echoed through space. "You attacked our diplomats under a flag of truce. You fabricated evidence to justify genocide. Now you face the consequences." He paused, letting his words sink. "In across the galaxy. This is what happens when you awaken sleeping predators. Surrender now, and some of you may survive what comes next." The message ended, but its impact echoed across Council space. Humanity had shown its teeth, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 weeks after the rescue of Ambassador Hyun-woo Park, the war was over. The Galactic Council's combined fleets, which had dominated space for thousands of years, lay in ruins across a dozen star systems. Their mighty warships had been reduced to floating debris, their armies scattered, and their leaders hiding in bunkers on their home worlds. Admiral Sora Kang stood on the bridge of her flagship, the massive dreadnought Earth's Fury, as it approached Concordia Prime. The space station that had once been a symbol of alien authority was now surrounded by human warships that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. "Admiral," reported Captain Min-jun Lee, her tactical officer, "all Council resistance in this sector has ended. The station is requesting permission to surrender." "Granted," Admiral Kang replied. "Signal the station that Ambassador Park will be conducting the surrender ceremony personally." Inside the station, the surviving Council members waited in what had once been their grand chamber. The massive seats that had been designed to make visitors feel small now seemed pathetic and empty. Only 7 of the original 12 counselors remained alive. The others had died when human forces struck their home worlds. Vexathar sat hunched in his chair, his once proud scales now dull with defeat. The Ceridian Prime Counselor who had condemned humanity to death now faced his own judgment. Beside him, the insectoid Clicktar clicked nervously, his compound eyes darting toward the entrance. Only Zephyra seemed calm among the survivors. The crystalline resonant had provided information to the human forces during the war and hoped it would be remembered now. The chamber doors opened and Hyun-woo Park entered with a small escort of human soldiers. He wore the same diplomatic uniform he had worn weeks ago, but everything else had changed. The scars on his face from his imprisonment were visible, and his eyes held a coldness that made the aliens shrink back. "Counselors," Hyun-woo said, his voice carrying the same calm professionalism as before. But now everyone could hear the steel beneath the politeness. Vexthar tried to speak with his old authority. "Ambassador, surely we can negotiate terms that are acceptable to both sides." Hyun-woo's smile was not pleasant. "Negotiate? You mean like we tried to do before you fabricated evidence and sentenced my entire species to death?" The chamber fell silent. Several counselors looked at the floor, unable to meet the humans' gaze. "You wanted to judge humanity by your standards?" Hyun-woo continued. "You found us guilty of crimes we never committed. Now you will learn what crimes we are actually capable of when pushed too far." He activated a holographic display that showed the current state of Council space. Red zones marked systems under human control. Yellow areas showed regions where Council governments had been dissolved. Green indicated the few worlds that had surrendered peacefully. "The aggressive species that started this war are now confined to their home systems," Hyun-woo explained. "Your governments have been dissolved and replaced with human-supervised administrations. The galaxy's trade routes now flow through human-controlled space." Vexthar's voice cracked as he spoke. "You cannot simply take over the galaxy. Other species will resist." "Will they?" Hyun-woo asked. Let me show you something. The display changed to show news broadcasts from across the galaxy. On world after world, alien populations were celebrating the end of Council rule. Many species had been oppressed by the Council's policies for centuries. To them, humanity represented liberation, not conquest. It seems most of the galaxy disagrees with you, Hyunwoo observed. They have seen how we treat those who surrender peacefully versus those who choose to fight. The difference was stark. Worlds that had welcomed human forces found their trade increased, their technology improved, and their people prosperous. Those that had resisted faced military occupation and strict controls. Kliktar spoke up, his voice filled with bitter anger. This is exactly what we feared. Humans spreading across the galaxy, dominating all other species. Yes, Hyunwoo agreed simply. But there is a crucial difference. We did not choose this path. You forced us onto it when you decided to commit genocide. He moved closer to the alien counselors, and they could see the weight of what had happened in his expression. We offered you partnership. We sought cooperation and mutual benefit. We tried to be the peaceful neighbors you claimed to want. But when you attacked our diplomats under a flag of truce, you showed us that peace was impossible. The human ambassador paused, letting his words sink in. So we gave you war instead. And we are very, very good at war. The final terms of surrender were simple but absolute. The Council was dissolved forever. The aggressive species that had planned humanity's extinction would remain confined to their home systems for the next century. All interstellar trade would be regulated by the new Terran Accord, but humanity proved they were better than their enemies. There was no genocide, no mass executions, no enslavement of defeated populations. The humans governed with the same principles they had once hoped to share as equals. Zephyra was spared any punishment and became humanity's primary liaison to the surviving alien governments. Her willingness to help during the war had been noted and rewarded. You showed honor when it mattered, Hyunwoo told her privately after the ceremony. That will not be forgotten. The crystalline being's light flickered with relief. I knew the Council was making a mistake. I tried to warn them. Some lessons can only be learned through pain, Hyunwoo replied. Perhaps your people will remember this one. Months later, Hyunwoo returned to Earth as a hero. The man who had maintained his dignity during false imprisonment and helped establish humanity's dominance over the galaxy was welcomed with celebration. But in the quiet moments, President Minho Seo and Admiral Sora Kang discussed the true cost of their victory. We have become the thing we never wanted to be, the president said as they stood in his office overlooking Seoul. The galaxy's apex predator. Admiral Kang nodded thoughtfully. The question now is whether we can rule with wisdom or if power will corrupt us like it did the Council. We must be better, President Seo replied. We must prove that humans can be trusted with this responsibility. It would not be easy. Already, some human leaders were suggesting harsher treatment of former Council species. Others wanted to expand human territory even further. The temptations of power were always present. But humanity had learned something important about itself during the war. When pushed to the edge of extinction, they did not panic or surrender. They fought with cold calculation and overwhelming force until the threat was eliminated completely. The galaxy's new order was established with humans at the top, but it was not built on oppression. Trade flourished under human protection. Scientific research advanced rapidly with human support. Many alien species found themselves better off than they had been under Council rule. In schools across the galaxy, alien children learned about the war in their history classes. The lesson was simple but important. Never corner a human. They do not fight to win battles. They fight to ensure no one ever threatens them again. The humans had smiled politely and offered friendship. When that was rejected with violence and betrayal, they had shown their true nature. Behind humanity's peaceful facade had lurked something far more dangerous than any weapon. The cold calculation of a species that had clawed its way to the top of one world's food chain and was perfectly willing to do it again on a galactic scale. Now they ruled the galaxy not through choice, but through necessity. And they would make sure that no one ever forgot the price of attacking Earth's diplomats. In the end, the Council had gotten exactly what they feared most: human dominance across the galaxy. The irony was that their actions had created the very future they tried to prevent. If they had simply left humanity in peace, none of this would have happened. But they had chosen war instead of peace, lies instead of truth, and genocide instead of coexistence. Now they lived with the consequences of those choices, subjects of the species they had tried to destroy. Death had indeed smiled back, and humanity's smile would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come.